Thank you so much for coming to the talk today. It's really about, building a business case for field medical enablement and using new technology in order to be able to do that. So I am joined today by some very distinguished panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but quickly, my name is Kelly Malloy. I work with Inizio Medical, and I am our lead customer engagement representative for our AI portfolio. So Tiffany, you want to go next?
My name is Tiffany Stewart. I'm a senior director with Inizio Engage. And in my role, I build foundations to help create best-in-class teams, MSL teams for our clients. My background is I'm a PhD by training. I did HIV research for a number of years. My postdoc was in nanomedicine drug delivery, and I learned through that work that I had a skill set of taking complex data and translating it into, or tailoring messages to different audiences. And I think most of the folks in this crowd can relate to that as they went through their training as well. And full circle moment for me, my first MSL manager is here in this crowd today. So she's been a mentor and coach throughout my career. And so I'm really excited to talk about how training and coaching can be augmented by these new technologies and artificial intelligence.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Donnie Wooten. I'm the Senior Director for Medical Capabilities with AstraZeneca. So I support all of the capabilities for three pillars, upscaling our strategy team's capability, our digital capability, and what we're phrasing as our external excellence capabilities.
Kelly, thank you for calling me distinguished and not old. It's a pleasant change. Hi, I'm Michael Kahn, most recently with Spark Therapeutics, leading its medical affairs operations capability. I have a medical communications background before that and trained as a journalist. And so telling a story and distilling it into a narrative that resonates and doing it efficiently, along with the business case, I have an MBA. All of that has come together for me at this point in my career, and happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, thank you all. And thanks all for being here again. So when we were talking about how we would frame this discussion, we really wanted to start with the importance of the MSL to the larger organization. And we all know that they are our connection points between our companies and HCPs in the field. And it's that bi-directional exchange of insight is really what's very important and why we have and need these relationships in the first place. And then as we were talking as a panel, it's, I guess, and you guys can really chime in here, but it is the largest single expense within medical affairs. And obviously for good reason. We want to make sure that we're compensating one of the most important teams within our organization. Then there's ancillary benefits and so on and so forth. $300,000 a year in US dollars in order to employ an MSL. So obviously you want to make sure that they're hitting the ground running and that they are as well equipped as they possibly can be entering into the field and being able to have those conversations, those important conversations with HCPs. I did some digging. Again, probably shouldn't be allowed to do that. But 83% of MSLs feel underprepared in their first year, which is obviously not a great percentage when you want to make sure that you're optimizing this team to deliver and bring back insights. And we also know that when MSLs are fully enabled, they are performing their best, not only for the organizations that they represent, but also for the patients that we're ultimately helping. So we want to make sure that we're moving beyond the static training and we're embracing new technologies in order to make sure our field forces are fully capable when they go out into the field. So we have a couple of polls today. Our first one, so whip out your phones because this is a next-gen technology talk.
So the question was, how effective do you feel your current MSL training programs are? And the results, we had about 28 people share their results, and it's a tie between moderately effective and could be significantly better.
Yeah, so Donnie, from your perspective, from maybe more of a home office perspective, what have you seen, what are some of the challenges that you've seen that may align with some of the folks in the room and some of their, experiences?
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say to anybody who's supporting a field team, kudos to you. I firmly believe that the most important part of medical affairs is the field team. They're the closest to the patients by way of their daily interaction with the providers and payers that we all are here to serve. So I think they're really the front runners of our organization. But I remember when I was in the field, I walked through the IV clinic of patients getting pembrolizumab and daratumumab real time. I could see what was going on. And I even had an issue where I saw someone had an anaphylactic reaction. So they know what's really going on in that clinic. So I truly believe that they're the eyes and ears, but also the face of our organization. So that investment is pivotal. I think that we're all trying to catch up with this digital age and really deliver in it, including the field. They are also the most disconnected from the organization because they're in the field every day. So I challenge my team to go into the field. I challenge the field to come into the home office. But I think why we're seeing some of that somewhat better or moderately inefficient is because no one has a true measure of where we want to go. So I think first you have to have a baseline. What is your field team doing really, really well? Most of them are going to be doing that scientific stuff really well because that's always been the bread and butter of hiring MSLs. Are you scientifically credible? But that is no longer the expectation. The differentiator now is, are you able to adapt new technologies? Are you able to use those new technologies in a digitally fluent way? Meaning, yeah, you use ChatGPT, but can you use ChatGPT or your in-house system to say, download a quick takeaway from these new NCCN guidelines and be able to quickly take that information in and have an eloquent conversation? And then how can you have your field leadership team measure and say, yeah, I could tell you if they're speaking scientifically accurate, but how can I tell you if you're using all the tools at your disposal? So I would say the more time we spend getting to know and understand the challenges of the field, the better we'll be successful. But I do think that there's a higher calling for the field to adapt tools, increase their digital fluency, and for the home office team to be the ones that are helping shepherd that forward.
Yeah, that's great insight. Thanks, Donnie. And I don't know, Tiffany, if you want, as an MSL, to maybe chip in some of your historic perspective on what some of the challenges might be for training.
Absolutely. I think that you're spot on. It's imperative that we adapt these tools. I mean, who in this crowd has heard the saying, the first year of an MSL you crawl, the second year you walk, and the third year you run? That's 3 years, right? And so what these tools can do in this type of generative AI adaptive training can shorten that time frame and create a more effective way for MSLs to be trained to optimize the team as a whole. It sort of meets the MSL where they are so that the team can grow together and learn together.
Anything else to add, Michael?
No, I agree with all that. I'm going to talk in a little bit. I can just jump into it about MSLs really owning the encounter and really mastering it as opposed to simply understanding the data and being able to communicate a number, but having a holistic understanding of the entire context of the encounter and what the deeper meaning is and where AI fits into that for preparation, I think is going to set apart the future MSL from the present MSL.
Yeah, great insight. Okay, so we have another poll for you guys.
So the question, where is your organization today using AI or other digital tools for training? And the top response, against 50-50 here, well, maybe not. We're exploring possibilities is the top response, meaning we're exploring them, 50%, and we're actively scaling them, meaning we're on the go, 38%, and then 13% says we haven't considered it yet.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting breakdown. Michael, you've been working on making scientific training in general a little bit more rigorous and engaging. Did you want to maybe talk about what you've done and how you're leveraging technology?
I think, to answer the question literally, I think it's less about what I've done than how excited, what I want to do next. The next MSL field training curriculum I build will be, that my team builds wherever it is, will be so unlike anything we've done. Because again, we want to encourage mastery of not only the data and the story, but the audience, the context, the academic environment, the business environment. And AI can really help us to do that. I'm thinking about adaptive testing, so getting beyond mere credentialing, but having a test that if an MSL, maybe a senior MSL, is getting all of them right, the questions get harder, kind of like the SATs, right? Might treat it differently for a less experienced MSL. Applying adult learning principles, taking really complex subjects and using tools like analogy and metaphor. AI can do these things faster than you or I might come up with them. And so to feed into a Gen AI tool, here's the information, but here's who we're training, here's what they have to do, apply some adult learning principles and have that iterative conversation to build out a curriculum in seeking the goal of mastery of that encounter is gonna look very, very different. And I think that's gonna be a really good thing.
I can add, I think if you're in that group that says we haven't started or somewhat exploring, I think what's important is every organization have a baseline that all their employees should have in terms of digital fluency. And I noticed that a lot of the big pharma companies are doing that, your J&Js, your AZs, their IT departments are putting through programs in their learning system to say, everyone needs to learn these baselines and you can either be gold, bronze, silver, or platinum. That way you have everybody on the same level in your organization so you can rapidly scale beyond that when everybody's at that point. So if someone doesn't understand what generative AI is, like agentic AI, which is very different than what we're using now, you're gonna have a slower uptick of getting them upskilled into using these AI agents. I'm sure you all have heard of those words. So I think you first start with working with your IT partners and saying, what is our baseline? I want all of our individuals that are in the field or individuals who are leading the field teams to have a baseline within AI, and who's gonna lead and create that course. That would be my first recommendation. And then I think when you go to the baseline and then everyone's at that baseline, you need to look at role-specific training that they need to have. What training does the field team needs to have and what baseline are they at now? So that would be my recommendation from what I've seen from leaving a small organization to a larger organization that is doing exactly what I'm describing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think empowering those MSLs and really anyone on our teams internally is a really important step to infusing technology into training and individual growth, right? So Tiffany, when you and I were talking, it's like, well, how do we use AI to really shorten the time for competitive intelligence and really preparing to have some conversations and handle objections with your HCPs. So there's lots of different things that we can be doing to equip our teams to leverage this technology. But you and I talked about several different scenarios. So scanning for CI was one of them.
Yeah, scanning for CI, but it builds on what you're saying, Donnie, in that there has to be a level of competency among your MSL teams, right? So that they're comfortable with this new technology and how fast it's sort of evolving and developing. Now, the first and fastest way to use it is optimizing our day-to-day as MSLs, right? Writing an email in a certain tone, in a tactful way, competitive intelligence. We use it for KOL research and preparation and establishing goals on how to move that KOL on the spectrum based on what we know from this person and the insight we've already gathered from that KOL. So there's these day-to-day activities that we can use to create these efficiencies. But I think that in terms of, and that can help with our scientific engagement, right? So we know how to have the right scientific conversation. But the next piece to that is developing our soft skills as MSLs, which is where we sort of meet the person where they are in their stage of skill set development. And that's another way that we can use AI to help with that. Because the saying is, science will get you in the door, but soft skills and relationship building keep you in the conversation.
Yeah, and I think elevating the word soft skills being agile with soft skills. We think we're like, well, go tell a story, and we're about to tell them how the Lion King and Disney tells their stories. But it's being a bit more agile, where you can say, hey, this is the new data that we have for this breast cancer indication that we've gotten. But however, I just put your information in this particular system that fed back that you're underdiagnosing by 43%. Is this accurate? Because if it's inaccurate, I'd like to make sure we're helping to change that. But if it's factual, what can you and I do to help elevate the number of diagnoses in your institution? And then they bring that information back into the home office to say, here's a big opportunity with this particular community practice, versus just saying, well, we want you to storytell, and then you tell this beautiful story about the product, but the real biggest problem isn't the product, is that they're not even diagnosing the right patient. And I think a big fear of MSLs that we're seeing is that the information that's being spit out, the hallucination, is discouraging them. But you have to let them know we're using the worst AI that it'll ever be. Every day it's better. Every single day it's better. You got to get comfortable with the base so that you can improve the future. So I would say being agile, soft skill, like taking it one step further, that we can see that implemented in the role.
Soft skills. I hate that term. I firmly believe that we should be talking about influence, about power, about charisma. And it's not just MSLs. This applies to all of medical. When we talk about communicating the value of medical, when we talk about having a seat at the table, when we talk about leadership, those are important concepts. Any rookie MBA can tell you that. What excites me is the possibility that AI, through repetition of encounter, might actually get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another poll.
So the question reads, if you could prioritize one area of training investment for next year, what would it be? Faster onboarding, adaptive scientific training, soft skills and relationship building, ongoing reinforcement, and continuous learning.
How about all of the above?
You have to pick one.
We've got more people participating now. So,
Oh, okay. I'm going to start calling people out. I recognize a lot of
the
faces in the
top
audience.
one right now says ongoing reinforcement and continuous learning, which I think is what we're pushing here.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, that's, obviously what we're pushing. We want to make sure that we are giving our MSLs the opportunity to keep learning. I think one of the opportunities that we have, and Tiffany and I have spent the last 18 months, I won't say soft skills for Michael's benefit, but we're looking at how AI simulation can actually help reinforce some of the soft skill building that we are, trying to infuse within our MSL field force. So, Tiffany, I don't know, what your perspective, well, I know what your perspective is. You agree with me. But there is an opportunity to use generative AI to give our MSLs a safe place to practice those conversations. So we can leverage AI, we can build out HCP personas so that my exchange with a large language model looks and feels like an exchange I may have in the field. So Tiffany, maybe you can expand on that.
Builds confidence, right?
Yeah.
Right? So the practice and repetition builds confidence. So when you start off as an MS, anyone heard of Dunning-Kruger effect? Thank you. Where it's a cognitive bias that we have where competence and that aligns competence and confidence. And when you're less confident, turns out you're more confident, right? And then when you learn more, that confidence level drops and then you become an expert. And so your slope kind of goes back up to being more confident. We want to shorten that time, right? So through this cycle of confidence by selecting the appropriate tools to train our teams. Sorry, I nerded out. I'm a PhD. All right, forgive me. But
Yeah.
so
That was super nerdy.
I know, I can't myself. Okay. So the cycle of confidence that we use to select the appropriate AI tool has a framework that is easy to remember because there's alliteration. There are 4 Ps that go along with it. It is, and I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. Prepare, practice, perform, and pivot. Okay. So let's talk about prepare. I think, Michael, do you mind talking about how we can prepare?
Prepare. So before you're even in the room as an MSL, what do you want to communicate? First of all, have you mastered the data? Have you mastered the story? Beyond that, who's your audience? And this is where AI, I think, and technology, beyond traditional KOL profiling and a database, plugging it into a Gen AI tool and simulating the encounter, you might get at something like, okay, this person has just joined the editorial board of this journal, but here's what this means for your data and for your story, to take that second step. And again, greater context matters. What's the business context? What's the academic context? All of that before the MSL even sets foot on the academic campus. I think preparation has always been really key. I'm sure the MSLs in the room would agree with me, but I think the ability to use next-gen tools to prepare is just exploding.
So I'll add to that, and I think you can look at it at the prepare MSL level, and you can look at it at the organizational level too, in identifying what your outcomes are for training so that you can prepare by building a foundation with the right tools, right? So there's two sort of levels to look at it. And then the next one is practice. Okay, I had an MSL manager tell me once, when we get new publications and pieces of data, don't go to your tier 1 KOL who's writing guidelines. First, practice with your tier 3 HCPs who are friendly to you, right? Who are warm and might push back a bit so you can practice the language skills in when you're, so practice is the second P to help build confidence. And I'll ask
You want to ask
myself.
me?
I'll ask
Oh,
you.
yeah, ask me.
sorry.
Don't ask yourself anything. That's weird. Yeah, so I think, it's creating that safe space, right? And that's really what we need to do in terms of, helping build that confidence and competence, really. But how can we use generative to create that safe space for the individuals that we're relying on to bring back this information, to be able to, explain the benefits of our drugs? So again, generative is super important in this situation, in allowing our MSLs to have that to and, not waiting for peer-to-peer, right? You can have this ability anytime, any place. To practice.
Yeah, what's really neat is the AI has moods. You can select different HCP sort of personas and create a really hard KOL or someone who's friendlier, someone who isn't as knowledgeable about the disease state or product. So that's what's interesting about these models, and it's in a safe space.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen any of this, how many of you all have like ChatGPT on your phone now? So how many of you have used the voice feature that allows you to talk to it? So maybe a number. How many of you have used the adaptive voice feature that says, I'm going to practice for this interview, listen to me and tell me what to do better? And then it'll say, I heard you, slow down here, pause, and insert these words. Do you want to say it again? And then it'll say, yes, and you start back. That's what they're saying. So your MSL should be able to do that same thing with a model that's emulating your segment of customers that says, hey, I'm in front of a tier 1 HCE who does not believe in this new device or this new drug that we have. I like to practice to influence him to understand why this science matters. Tell me how I'm doing. And then they practice. And that's what they continue to do with that first P. First, you need to prepare. You need to make sure you know the data. Then you practice, and then you prove it, saying, we want all our MSLs to be at a score 5 before they go to tier 1 providers. And you can see what your outcome is. Right now, you're articulating at a tier 2 or a tier 3. Here's ways to get to a tier 4. So that's what these models are doing, but you don't have to wait to integrate those into your systems in your actual companies. You can use these on your own devices. This is exactly what we're talking about, that simulated conversation that can elevate your ability to have a conversation with your providers.
Yeah, and just, obviously they're available on your phones, but
Don't use them unless they're
don't
approved.
use them. Yeah, don't use them. And you can, however, if you want to make sure that you have a scientifically accurate conversation and a reliable response back, there are tools that are available for you to consider pulling into your training ecosystem so that you're really getting a very lifelike interaction. So you can pull in things like publications, you can pull in your scientific communication platform, your narrative, your objection handlers that will allow your MSLs to have a very lifelike experience. So using ChatGPT, maybe that's the crawl.
It won't give you the right medical insights,
Yeah.
right? It won't teach you how to ask the right questions.
But
to
it's
get
your,
medical
it's,
insights.
I will challenge back that it's your first start of
It's the
practice
start.
because
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
has access to
I
that.
should have used it
Obviously,
today.
you don't
This
want to.
one.
That's your crawl.
You don't want to use
Yeah.
it for your work and saying like, well,
Yeah.
let me share all this off-label information and throw it into ChatGPT. That's a publicly source
Yeah.
that could be public. But as you're interviewing for your next job or your next promotion, use it. Those are the
Right.
tools. Those are the tools that your MSL should be using to practice their own interviewing skills. So they might be ahead of everyone. And in fact, we're trying to upskill our executives to let them understand these type of tools that are out there.
Thank you so much. If I don't want to take away from the time to network with everybody with the networking lunch, so I'm pretty sure all of you will be in the exhibit hall, around the exhibit hall, if you want to continue the conversation. And thank you for doing the survey too. That was a great way for
All right.
engagement.
And if you want to take place in another survey, stop by, see me. We're gonna try and publish these results, but we want to make sure that we have an understanding of where everyone is in the adoption of AI in their own organizations. So come see me at the Inizio booth. Would love to get your perspective.
I have nothing to do with Inizio, so I'm not promoting them, but they do have the best reusable bags. And as a chocolate
Yes.
connoisseur, the best chocolate. I think it's UK chocolate, right?
It is.
Time for
It's
a
not
question.
US
I can
chocolate.
confirm.
What's that?
I've
We have
had
time
several
for
pieces.
one question or no?
We don't know. We have to break. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Feel free to hang out if people want to come up and